Warning. The following podcast may cause you to change your understanding of what it really means to be a human being. Side effects may range from a minor loss to complete annihilation of ego, a feeling of merging with something bigger than previously conceived, and a deep, abiding peace. Please, continue at mortal risk to yourself as a separate entity. Welcome. Enjoy.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. Welcome back to another episode 5 of All One Time Live Season 2. This is a continuation of the conversations with Stone Age skills expert Chris Morasky. Last episode was a conversation with him from the 4th of May. And this episode is from the 6th of June, 2021. In this episode, Chris and I discuss food, where it comes from, what it means, the importance of gratitude and that connection to our food in our understanding of and interaction with ourselves and the world in which we are a part of, not separate from. The implications of technology, including artificial intelligence, and where it is now, where it may lead, and basic conscious living. So I hope you enjoy this episode. If you have any questions or comments, etc., drop me a line at allonetimellive@gmail.com. I'm honored to be able to share Chris's voice right now in these times. It is more important perhaps than ever to have such a conscious voice in touch with the rhythm of the world, the songs of place, the sounds of nature and wild things that tap into the heart that we all share, the ancient wisdom that is encoded within us that perhaps we have lost touch with, but nevertheless seems to be waiting to be awakened and heard again and used as a tool to better guide each of our steps, our thoughts, our words, to together genuinely create a better now and a better future. All of us have choices as people. It's one of the most significant differences, perhaps, between us and other species is our profound ability to exact a change in this world in a way that offers abundance, kindness, and nurturing far beyond the scale of our other living companions, though they hold perhaps the keys to accessing that wisdom or to unlocking that which may lay dormant within us all by listening, learning to listen, and to see and read what knowledge there is in nature. We can perhaps better understand ourselves and the potential for living a great life together and creating a more beautiful now and a better and brighter future. So let's take a breath. Wherever you are, be there, be here, present, awake, hopefully comfortable, and enjoy this additional continuing conversation between myself and Chris Morasky. Here you go.
Hi there. Hey, my friend, how are you?
I'm good, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Excellent.
So, where does this episode find you at the moment?
Well, I'm still here in Montana. I'm back at River Camp, which is just between Cardwell and Whitehall, Montana, where I've done a lot of these podcasts from. But that's not where I've been spending most of my time over this past moon.
Cool. Are we doing video or just audio?
It's up to you.
Let's do video if we can. I might be putting these on YouTube and maybe Spotify with video this season for interviews.
Okay, let me see if I can figure this out. There we go. Look at that.
Nice.
Cool. All right. I'm going to see if I can just set this here and have it actually stay.
Cool. So you're back
All right.
inside the not yurt. It is
Inside the Gare. The
Gare.
Yes. Yeah.
I was gonna say Gert. I'm like, no, that's not it.
No, that'd be a hybrid. No.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, how have you been spending your time since we last spoke?
Well, I've spent a lot of time in the Missouri River Breaks, which are kind of north central Montana. And then I spent the last week in the Custer National Forest in southeast Montana. And that's just outside the tiny little town of Ashland, Montana. Both of these areas are places that have a really, really low human density, almost nobody. And, I was at this beautiful pond there in the Custer National Forest, and most days I wouldn't see anyone, even though I'm on a road. I didn't have to hike into it. And then in the Missouri River Breaks, same thing. Days and days would go by and wouldn't see another human. And I think that's, for me, that was really significant, as a wildlife biologist, and my focus on really learning what the song of the land is, being in these places that have really intact ecosystems and don't have a whole lot of human interference. Not that humans have to necessarily be interference within a natural system, but that modern humans typically are. Creating lots of noise, lots of stimulus that is not in alignment with other natural activities that are taking place. So, I was basically listening to the sound of birds and the wind through the trees.
Were you hunting and gathering? Fishing?
I was fishing and gathering. Yeah. So putting out set lines, a little bit of that, and also set lines. I was fishing with a set line, which is basically it's a line of paracord with short lines and hooks dropping down off of that. And in eastern Montana, I can lay out 6 lines with 6 hooks each, which I never did because that'd be just a crazy amount of food. It's just, way more than anything I would want. So I would lay out 1 set line and then catch 1, 2, 3 fish every time I would go and check it. I'd check it a couple of times a day, and more than enough. So big channel catfish, I don't know, big, up to 5 pounds. So big, looking at what I can eat for dinner anyway. And then a variety of other fish there too, but the channel catfish were the ones that were the easiest to catch.
And you've caught those by hand, right? Also, as I recall.
I haven't. I've caught a lot of trout by hand.
Trout.
Where they call that tickling. So that's finding a hole that the trout is in. So certain small streams where there's holes up under the banks around tree roots. It's just a matter of moving about this fast. It's good we have video. So I'm moving about that fast, often in freezing cold water, until I can feel like in that dark space somewhere, the body of a trout.
Yeah.
And then it's just very slowly working my hand around it. And they're used to having other fish and leaves and sticks and things floating around in the water. So as long as I move really slowly, then they don't swim away. And then it's just simply grabbing them. Catching a channel catfish by hand is a little different. You go after the ones that are big enough that you can wave your fingers in front of their face and they'll eat your hand.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's called noodling.
Okay.
And I haven't done that yet. I'm planning this winter. I think I'm going to go down to Alabama and visit some folks down there. And they've got big channel cats down there. So I might give that a shot.
Cool. And you mentioned,
it sounds like a bad idea, so I really want to try.
Yeah, yeah. Why not? Mark it off the list.
Yeah.
You mentioned a term that I've heard other people that like to. Well, it was Dawn.
Wunia, Dawn?
Yes, Wonia. Yeah. So she had mentioned paracord as well. So just to define it, what is it? It's cord from parachute, right?
I mean, now it's just made simply as paracord, but what it is, it's a nylon sheath that then has typically, I think there's 9 strands of thin cord inside of it, and it's rated to 550 pounds, most of it, and so it's kind of a standardized, easy, strong, durable kind of a rope.
Okay, thanks. Just a quick little definition of terms. And I cut you off with my question about spear fishing or catching a catfish by hand. You were going on about your fishing. So if you can find your mark, please continue.
I don't know, but I did go and I did a little bit of spear fishing, and in eastern Montana, it's kind of unusual that spear fishing is allowed in freshwater at all. In most states, it's not. But why? I think simply because it's something that the fish and game departments are unfamiliar with, and there's not a lot of people that are interested in it. So they don't have pressure to come up with regulations, and they don't really know that much about how it all works. And so they're just not allowing it. But I think the concerns could be that it would be too easy, and it's really, really not that.
I was thinking both of those thoughts. Yeah. I remember in northern Wisconsin, the locals, the local white folk were in an uproar about the native people spear fishing their lakes, that they would be depleting the stock.
Right. Yeah. And that's a different situation. There it's I think they do most of the spearing during the spawning season, and I haven't watched how that's done, but they are able to do it pretty effectively. But still, the total number of fish that the native people are taking out is it's not a threat to the fish stocks.
Right. Yeah.
And those people have treaty rights for it. That's super legit.
Yeah.
But in my case out here, like I went spearfishing in a lake in Wyoming last year, and I dove this lake for several days, each time going out for a couple hours, and just hitting it hard, doing long dives, and I never saw a single fish.
And what's a long dive for you?
I can hold my breath a little over 4 minutes. So I'm not hitting that downtime when I'm kicking and all of that, that's more just static. I can hold my breath that long. So, 2.5 minutes down is about right for me. And I never saw a fish. The reality is the fish that are so perfectly adapted to being down there, they see me before I see them. So they have to kind of consent to being looked at.
Yeah.
And I did see when I was out here this last time, I had this huge, like a 4-pound smallmouth bass that was just swimming around me, checking me out. Not legal to harvest by spearfishing. It's only pike and walleye, both non-native fish, carp, and a few others. But there was a fish that was so big, nothing was a threat to it in the water. And so I'm guessing that it saw me and was like, I don't even know what this thing is, but nothing eats me in this lake, so I'm gonna go check it out.
Cool.
So it was cool to have it swim around me. But I never did see I never saw a pike, I never saw a walleye on my last trip there, and I dove for about an hour. It's just going to take more time. But for now, definitely fishing with a hook and line would be more effective, but not as good an exercise.
And you're not using any goggles.
I am. Yeah.
You are. Okay.
Yeah. I've got the whole bit. I've got a snorkel, I've got a mask, I've got a wetsuit, fins.
Is it all woven out of natural materials that you've gathered yourself?
Oh yeah, totally. It's wild dog bane that I've woven together. I've coated it with pine pitch, and it's really good.
Yeah, I think it's a natural thing. I think a lot about how we are as people in nature and how much we are out of balance or out of harmony right now. Yet we're doing this, there's a lot of good things in science and medicine and technology that are, in a way, a natural evolution of our species, if perhaps done in balance, in a way.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
The argument could be made no, but
it's Fermi's paradox. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So Fermi's paradox was a group of astronomers that all sat down at one point, and they were wondering, like, where are all of the aliens? Because there's so many habitable planets that we've identified that seem to be within striking distance of a more advanced civilization. So I don't know, NASA and the Pentagon are now coming out with more information about unidentified flying objects, and there's a lot, but still we don't have anything that is really conclusive that there is any alien civilizations that have contacted humanity. And so to answer where are they, one of the concepts was that maybe when civilizations reach a certain level of technological complexity, they eliminate themselves. That it just sort of is a natural occurrence. And that definitely is the path that humanity is on right now.
So it is natural. But,
maybe I don't know. Like, I love that we are in this incredible crossroads right now, that humanity is like, there's the cliff, we're going off of it, and either we're going to sprout wings on the way down, or we're going to crash in a heap at the bottom. But either way, it's the most exciting time to be alive in the history of humanity.
Indeed. I was going to say, I like the way traditional cultures incorporate technology, like here in Sweden, where you have the Sami who are following the reindeer around. They use snowmobiles and helicopters and trucks.
Right.
And when you're talking about the buffalo gathering too, that they are incorporating modern technology into that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I've been thinking about that recently, in the sense of, when I look at especially this big nudge going deeper into using our technology for all of our communication, since during the pandemic, so many people have been in isolation. And, here we are on Zoom,
Yep.
Along with the rest of the world.
Yep.
And how children today are developing relationships with their technology that are they're very human-like, and so they're having legit relationships where there are feelings involved, where there's an array of different hormones, that biochemical soup that is going through our bodies, that's in relationship with our technology.
Mm-hmm.
And how, when you look at an indigenous perspective of what is a part of our ecology, it includes a whole bunch of things that modern science doesn't consider to be alive. It includes the rocks, it includes the waters, it includes the wind, it includes the sun, and the interplay of all of these things, along with the things that we typically would call alive. And all of these things have place, have purpose, have energy, and have relationships. They're all a part of that. And they're all functioning within a set of natural principles. And so it creates this harmonious network. And I think that's really where we need to be taking our next step with our technology. It's coming where we're going to have to really make some interesting decisions about like the levels of sentience of artificial intelligence, and is this alive, is it not alive, what kind of rights does it have, what kind of considerations do we need to have. But what a fascinating world that we have all of these things to figure out now.
A roommate of mine in college was in the EMS area of school, and I was a engineering, math, and sciences area of school, and I was an art student, and I was very much, well, as I still am, more ethics leaning towards tree hugging, earth loving,
right? Yeah,
being in touch with the vibration of life and sort of pursuing the deeper knowledge or what have you. And we had two different schools of thought about where we're heading as a species on the planet. And mine was that we need to, curb our consumption of resources and our sort of wanton advance of technology at any cost. Otherwise, we will not survive ourselves. And his school of thought was, no, it's only going to be due to our ability to advance technology sufficiently that we will be able to address the problems that we are facing in order to survive. And it was, I couldn't, I mean, we just stayed in those two camps. We would have long discussions and neither one of us, would sort of be convinced by the other. And they were fair discussions, but I'm still of the same camp.
Yeah. There's always the lag time. So a new technology comes out, just like a new species comes into an environment, or there's an adaptation, some kind of a change in the size of the beak, or the external cheek pouches on the pocket gophers. These things happen. I guess a better example probably would be the relationship between prairie dogs and rattlesnakes. So prairie dogs have a tremendous amount of resistance to the venom of rattlesnakes. And they've kind of gone back and forth, over many thousands of years in developing a little bit more immunity, and the rattlesnakes changing their venom a little bit. And, rattlesnakes are still eating prairie dogs, but they're not eating all of them. Things move slowly enough that as one develops something that's a little bit of an edge in its hunting ability, like with the rattlesnake, they're not going to eat all of the prairie dogs before they can respond to it. And so these are changes to develop more resilience that are happening over a really long time, hundreds of years, thousands of years. And our modern technology doesn't work that way. Certainly the things that we impose technologically on our biological citizenry, there's no catching up. It just doesn't happen. Like, things don't evolve that quickly. And like, we're watching kind of an interesting phenomenon right now with cyber hacking. And there's a lot of governments that are scrambling to get ahead of ransomware. So like here in the US on the East Coast, there was some hackers that believed to have originated out of Russia, that they held hostage the network that supplies about 40% of the gasoline along the East Coast, and they just locked it up. And they were, the ransomware hackers, they're paid millions of dollars so that things could be opened up again. And we don't have a way of getting ahead of that. We have a way of reacting to that. And I think that's the issue. We're always playing catch up. We're always trying to fix the things that technology has broken, rather than technology fixing things in the first place.
Yeah. As you've been saying this, I imagined a rather dark thought. What happens when AI is working on hacking itself and simultaneously solving the hack? But nevertheless, it seems to be some battle. I'm going to close the window for a second. There's some grass trimming going on outside, which is quite loud. I'll be right back.
Gotcha. All right.
Thank you.
You betcha. Yeah, we have some grass trimming going on out here too. It's a flock of sheep.
Yeah, nice.
Some of them just walked by. What were you just saying before you got up?
About AI itself. Like, once AI looks at how to hack a system, I mean, it's going to be, when they reach that critical level of AI, which everyone's racing to get to, whoever gets there first is probably always going to be ahead of hacking everyone else.
Yeah. And I think we can understand AI as existing along a spectrum. And so we have dumb AI, which is going to cause and is causing all kinds of problems. So one of the big problems that I see happening right now is the algorithms that are set up on Facebook and on YouTube, where so many people are being guided. So it's, you could think of it like, here's your teacher, here's your mentor, who's saying, oh, what I think you would like to watch this next. This would be something that'll, move you forward in whatever way. And this is done by algorithms which are really based on engagement. So it's not based on public good. It's not based on expanding your consciousness, developing new perspectives, seeing how other people experience something. It's what's going to keep you watching, keep you typing. And so that's that's a that is a huge problem that's happening right now. Is whatever gets the most hits of adrenaline and dopamine, those are the things that we are following.
Yeah.
And that's not the right trail to walk down.
There's a podcast I listened to, I think it was called Down the Rabbit Hole. It was a while back, but it basically followed the YouTube algorithm. And it was interesting because it interviewed one of the key people in it, had been a developer for YouTube and or Google at different times, I think, working on these algorithms and seeing these patterns that were not as neutral as they ought to have been. And then the reporting went further and traced the stories of people who had been influenced by these algorithms and, ended up taking rash action and really, altering distorting their perception of events in the world.
Yeah.
And it really affected behavior in a bad way.
Yeah. So we have, we have so many people that are believing things today that are completely untrue because they have been able to follow these trails that are based on algorithms of engagement to take them from one collaborating source of information to another. And it's just adding and adding and adding until finally whoever is following that rabbit hole is absolutely convinced, that, for instance, there's a pedophile ring that's operating out of a pizza establishment. Right. And, that was one of the conspiracies, Pizzagate, they called it. Yeah. And somebody actually showed up with guns and showed up at the pizza place and was like, all right, take me downstairs. And well, there's no downstairs. Right. It doesn't even exist. Yeah. And, here this guy invested so much of his life force into something that was completely untrue. And
believing he was doing something valiant and good.
Yeah. So we have a lot of people with really good intentions and really poor impact right now because they're following false flags, just not following truth. And how do you even validate truth?
Yeah, exactly.
That becomes
when
more
your
challenging.
Source is the internet, when your source is the tools of social media.
And I don't know if you've seen now that there's I'm seeing that it's advertised on like Facebook and Instagram where use the software where you can superimpose your face on whatever scene from whatever movie or whatever. Yep. Yeah. And that's technology that's really come around in the last couple of years. We are in an era in which you can watch something that will absolutely fool all of your senses, which has any one person saying and doing anything. And, so we've talked about this before, like we're in an era now of exponential growth around all of these technologies. So everything is changing so incredibly rapidly. The exponential growth curve is like that. And so we are like right here in this beginning of the curve, and, the rocket ship is ready to take off. And if everything in the way that humanity is working is in perfect alignment, if we're all doing things in such a way that everyone's needs are being met and harmony and goodness is kind of the big everyone's focus, then we reach a golden era. And if not, we just crash into the sun and burn up. And right now, of course, the amount of capitalistic greed and individualism and just lack of honesty across the board is what will drive our ship into the sun.
I believe
that's where we're at.
I believe in a future where there's a sort of a bifurcation of our species or society, where there's a polarization of greedy and egalitarian, let's say.
Hmm.
And
Well, how do you have them exist together when with the with AI that is in the hands of those people who are greedy and powerful and rich? Um, you can just set the algorithm, set the command, and let it run.
yeah, I don't think it's going
Um,
to be a fair playing field.
no,
No.
no, not at all.
And I
I
don't
mean,
believe the majority. I don't think it's going to be even. Let's say I would love to know it would be, but I think the people that will find that there is the most important aspect of life is to be giving and to connect and to be kind and to share and to teach and help and support.
mhm,
Maybe that's going to be a smaller group, but
yeah,
hopefully they will endure after the others have burned
yeah,
out in their own sun.
yeah, yeah. Um, I wonder, there's just amazing work that's being done right now in artificial intelligence. And it's still at a very dumb level, but in terms of, somebody is in crisis, or you call a crisis hotline, you really don't want to be put on hold.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there's only so many humans to be there to respond. But amazingly, using artificial intelligence for therapy is something that is really viable. It's really working to a limited extent right now, but it's working.
I don't know
And
anything about that. Share a little bit about what you know. That sounds really fascinating. What are some of the things
yeah,
you've heard?
yeah. Well, there are there's a subset of it is almost like a script for I don't want to oversimplify therapy, because therapy can delve into a lot of complexity, but some of the most basic things are always, are you safe? Are you physically safe? Do you have a roof over your head? Are your physical biological needs being met? So that's step one, to assess that. And so you have essentially it's a chatbot that is asking you questions and then taking your information and responding to that. And and then if you say something like, well, I'm feeling sad today, then that triggers a response that is like, oh, really? Would you like to tell me about that? I'd like to hear. And so you have fairly simple algorithms that are encouraging people to get in touch with their feelings, to communicate about what's troubling them, to offer some suggestions around simple techniques that can help a person to sort through that.
Okay.
Around meditation, around reaching out to certain kinds of more human resources. And it's not a replacement of human therapists, but eventually we will get to the point where we do that. And I was just seeing recently there's some work being done where people they have difficulty with empathy, so they have a hard time reading what's going on emotionally with other people. um, Artificial intelligence is actually really good at reading emotion by looking at a person's facial expressions, looking at their posture, um, the manner in which they're speaking, and then it's conveying that information to this person who struggles with interpretation of emotion.
Uh-huh.
And it's a way of using modern technology to help a person become more human in a way. And I think we're just going to see more and more and more of that. I think that we're going to get to the point where so many people, so many of the kids, what they are learning, they're interacting with a human-like interface. What was it? Maybe it was Google that was, I can't remember which company was saying that, they are in the works to roll out in the next couple of years holographic images, which would be you life-size communicating instead of a Zoom call like this on a flat screen. I just dial you up and you appear here in my gare, and you're life size, and I'm like, hey, Obi-Wan.
Yeah, right.
It's totally that, it's the Star Wars or Star Trek kind of a reality. We're right there. We're almost to that level of technology. And so then when you have AI instructors that are able to appear as human, that have a competence around interpreting and conveying emotion, there's we very quickly will get to a point where this technology will be able to educate, in the sense that the student will be able to comprehend, to internalize, and to move with that information better than a human instructor can.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I mean, I imagine they would optimize the teaching and information content,
Right.
delivery, pace, level of interest, so that students would be maximizing their learning, which can be
right, because
because
right now, if I'm running a program and I've got 20 kids in front of me, I am speaking to 20 kids kind of as a monolith. Is one group, and I'm speaking to that, as opposed to the way in which AI can have an individual response to 20 individuals, and it's still that same AI program that's just running to 20 different subsets, subprograms. And what are we going to lose in all of that? That's always the question for me, because as much as a machine might be effective, it's still not human. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's really a thing that we need to look at. It's the same concept as these companies that are now moving into laboratory grown meat, lab grown meat that is putting these factories out of business, that have been like raising sort of industrial chickens and beef,
which is a real horror show,
which is horrible. It's terrible. So it's great. We can just propagate cells in whatever their factory rendition of a petri dish is. And
any shape you want.
So they're growing chicken nuggets, and it's real chicken. It is it is real
genetically
cell structure. It is
exactly.
It's it. And yet this is an organism that's never breathed, that's never actually eaten anything, that doesn't have the same kind of connectedness with their environment. And so already we have a problem in our world around people being dissociated from their sources of nourishment and having a lack of gratitude for who they are and how they move through the world. And if you can go and you can purchase meat that didn't involve the death of anything that we call an animal, because it's not a singular organism, it's just a collection of cells, then do we need to be grateful for that? Do we need to engage our hearts?
It's really interesting. It's like right now where we're at, Well, if you start, I remember actually when I first was on the land and I came back and would, had the revelation of, gosh, our meat doesn't come from the grocery store in a styrofoam tray covered in clear plastic. It has a life. And I would begin to have these conversations with people. It was an uncomfortable conversation. Nobody wanted to talk about that. Like, would you eat meat if you had to kill the animal? Oh, I don't want to kill an animal. Well, you're participating in that. So as long as we have that like pervading consciousness, then it seems this substitute of concentrated animal feed operations, meat, is a good thing. But you're right. Ultimately, it disconnects us from the whole process, which is at the heart of that kind of conversation, where you have the connection, where you have the respect, and the gratitude. So for a short term, it might be good, but it's not like it's going to be a short term thing that's going to go away. Once it's in place, it's probably then going to be our forever meat.
Yeah, I've wondered about that quite a bit. Are we going to move into a reality in which, in which the death of food animals is outlawed? And you just can't? Or is it going to move into a reality in which if you go to a fast food place, then that's what you're going to get, but you still have the opportunity to purchase from grocery stores or other like not fast food restaurants the flesh of something that was previously a live whole organism? And could that difference be could that difference actually be something that makes the whole organism, formerly a live source of protein, more sacred? Like it kind of, we then look at it as like, oh, okay, so there's this, and then there's this. And one is from a lab, and we can treat that and think about it in one way, but the other one, no, we get it, that there is actually something living, breathing that was killed. And so we pause and we do cultivate more gratitude for that. I don't know how that's going to go. I'm concerned about it. I'm concerned about a lot of things.
Yeah, I tend to run in all directions once I have this kind of level of new and very interesting advanced information, like all the way to the bad side, what's the worst thing that could happen from it, and then also, what's the best possible combination of events, and recognizing there's a myriad of other things that I'm not even thinking about, which could be consequences. And we're just going to see. So, so then this is good. This brings me to where I want to go with this whole season 2 about talking about love and kindness and support. I think a big differentiator is going to be how much we can bring that level of awareness, consciousness, intention of kindness and gratitude and appreciation and support and recognition of sacredness. And that's an intention. That's something that we are going to choose to do. First, we have to be aware of it and value it, and then activate it.
Yeah. So my definition of love is very simple. It's connection.
Yeah.
So connection is understanding. Connection is integration. It is moving in such a way that there is an increase of stability, diversity, and harmony. And that's what we see when we look at ecology. We see that over time there's more diversity leading to more stability, and everything is sort of functioning together. So where I was just in the Custer National Forest, I was staying at this pond where over the course of a week there, I think there was about 50 different species of birds that from just this little spot where I was camping, I was able to track all of these different organisms, all of these different kind of life ways. And And quite often there'd be, half a dozen species of birds that are calling, and they're not calling over top of each other. Everybody is listening to everybody else. And so this one is calling, and then in the pause, the next one is calling at that time. And then there's this other one that's calling here, and, and it cycles back around. But everybody is giving space. Everybody's giving airtime for the other ones out there, so that there is more of a sense of cooperation than competition, which, the Darwin's understanding of evolution has really been taken and run with by people who were trying to utilize that understanding for corporate interests. So we get manifest destiny that came out of that, the idea that if you're strong enough to take something, then it's yours, and that's okay. But actually, when you really look at how nature functions, it's way more about cooperation than it is about competition. There's very little competition that's going on in this sort of tooth and claw, and whoever is the strongest survives. Like that's not the way that nature operates. It's a lot of giving space to, and then when spaces open up, a tree falls, here's more sunlight that hits the floor, then there's an opportunity there, and then new organisms come in, and there is some competition there as time goes on, and that space transitions back into an apex, kind of a forest once again, or whatever the end point. So, I see is that I'm listening to there, and I'm listening to the way in which all of these pieces together create a harmonious symphony. And that was particularly what I was really loving most about being in these two areas, the Missouri Breaks and down in the Custer National Forest, because they're intact. These are ecosystems that have almost all of the instruments still in the orchestra, which, of course, is not what you get when you're in a city and you've got a robin that's trying to, do its best to compete with the sound of the traffic and the jackhammer, right. And, all of these other things. And all of the human sounds that are taking place are almost, they're not tracking all of the other sounds. They're not looking for those spaces. They're not giving airtime for these other kinds of stimulus. And the feeling from an instinctual level, like in our bones, is that there is disharmony, that it brings up stress. Whereas in a natural environment, I don't have to look for predators where I am there. I listen for the birds. The birds tell me. The birds are sending out a signal to all of the other organisms there, because the deer are listening to the birds. Everything is kind of connected in that way. And what the birds are basically saying is like, hey, everybody, I'm Larry. This is where I live. It's a super sweet pad. If any ladies want to come and visit, you should come and check it out. And I'm pretty awesome. And by the way, it's all good. Like, it's all clear. Like I'm on a perch. I got a good view of the area, and everybody chill. And that's kind of the message that's going on all around me constantly, this continuous all good signal. And so internally, I just rest easy. I'm super relaxed, because I've got
it's
couple
the alarm,
hundred.
It's the alarm that's saying everything is all right.
Yeah. And I've got like a couple hundred biological sensors in these birds that are within earshot. that I'm listening for all the time. I'm constantly tracking in my subconsciousness. And whenever a predator does show up, then it's either revealed in a shift to aggressive alarm calls or silence. And sometimes it's that creeping silence that comes in and it's like, hey, all the bird songs stopped.
Right.
What's happening?
Yeah.
And so that's another alarm going off. It's just a silent alarm.
So that's a cooperation and a connection and a participation, and with keen observation and a harmony. Is that the same as love, though? To me, it seems like love, there's another ingredient there. Like, that seems very practical. And indeed, it takes attention and care to get there, where you're not talking over each other or competing for sound,
right.
or paying no attention to it at all. But there's something more with love.
Yeah.
Seems.
Well, for me, the other side to it is so there's two things. Beyond the connection with and the understanding, the integration, where I'm tracking all of these birds, for instance, then there's also the gratitude. And then there is giving back. And for me, it's those three things together. And then we have something that I would say is love. And giving back is a really interesting one. Because I can go into an environment and I can look at it and I can see, for instance, like, oh, there's, I'm not finding, well, down here in southeastern Montana, there's a root plant that is, the root is what's gathered, called tinsila. Indian turnip is a common name for it. And it's a root that's about this big, and it's good. It's really tasty. And I could say, hey, I'm not finding this plant here in this particular area, but it's in this region. And so I could start spreading seeds there. And that would be me coming in with kind of this colonial mindset, colonizer consciousness, where I'm saying, this is something I like, and it would benefit me to have more of this food plant here. And so I'm going to do that, and it's kind of like missionaries coming into an indigenous village and saying, well, you need Jesus, clearly, otherwise you're just heathen savages, and, you're going to live a horrible life, and then your afterlife, you're totally screwed. Rather than sitting down and talking with the elders and finding out, what is it that you all really need? And who are you? How do you move through the world? And what do you believe? And how are you interconnected to the bigger environment that's all here? So in these places, I am very much leaning into, how do I give back to these places? And mostly I'm in a space where I'm still sitting, like I'm still in council with the elders, which is, the birds and the trees and everything that's there. And I'm really seeking to understand, like, what is it that is not going to benefit me specifically, but benefit us. It's including myself in the us. And then how can humans be a natural part of the environment and a contributor?
And us not just being humans, but
yes,
the entire ecosystem. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
And that, in a way, is what you are giving, is listening, is paying attention, so that you can take the counsel of the ecosystem in the wisest way and apply it.
Yeah. I really look at the time that I've spent here, this last moon in particular, as I've been in school, and even the school that I help run, Wisdom Keepers, the concept there, wisdom keepers, is it's not me. Like, I'm not the one who's, oh, I'm super wise, let me tell you all about it. It's instead, leaning into this really ancient wisdom that comes from the beings that are in harmony within natural systems. And by studying that, by being a student of that, then we gain wisdom. The wisdom keepers are mostly, in the way that I view the school, not the humans. We're leaning into deeper wisdom that is more profound because it's coming from an instinctual place rather than from a cultural place.
I have thought just recently that because of all of the technology we have, and because of the outpacing of the technological development with our own evolution, we have so quickly lost touch with that wisdom that may have been much more commonplace 1,000 years ago, or I'm not sure at what point we really went off the road, but we started to cultivate what we were learning, and we started to focus in here and forget all the rest of this stuff. And now, so it's just like, this juice box full of information streams that have nothing to do with what the rest of the council of the elders of the planet would be giving as information to pay attention to. We've lost that. So it is really good that you guys are the wisdom keepers and trying to pump up the volume on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think our species is simultaneously too smart and too dumb for its own good. We because we have the we have books, we have the internet, we have the means by which we can stack learning on top of pre-existing learning, that we can have certain individuals that really understand various technologies at a very deep level. And at the same time, the average person could not explain how a light bulb works, or how their cell phone works. And so we have, overall, most of humanity is actually dumber, I think, today than we have been in prehistory, particularly because we don't understand how our world works. And that to me seems like such a basic thing. Like, you should understand how your world works. And in nature, you have something that's already working, it's already functioning perfectly, and you just be a student of that, and gradually over time have a deeper understanding of the nuances of all of these interconnections. But when we look at the technology that's out there today, there's this explosion of information which is not truth, and which is not all useful. It's a trash barge of data points, and you've got to you've got to sort through all of it. And of that, I think that humanity has really lost sight of the core questions that we should be continuously asking ourselves. Like, is this making me happier? Is this increasing my sense of peace? Is it increasing the size of my heart? How is it affecting all of my relationships? How is it affecting the stability and the diversity of the ecosystem that I'm in? And is it going to create a more beautiful future for everyone? And instead, we're looking at, how do I level up? How do I get more for myself? How do I get more for, my immediate family? And we, because we're such a dumb organism, we're easily fooled. It's super easy to
We're
hack
so easily programmed.
Human biological system. Yeah, it's
when
so
you're
easy.
talking about AI teaching, that's one of the dark areas I was thinking, like how masterfully we could be conditioned to have certain desires, intentions, and take actions, and really winnow down our understanding to lose so much of that kind of wisdom, which is implicit in nature and interaction.
Yeah, and what we saw with the QAnon phenomenon is that it was very well laid out. It was a self-organizing system, so that the players kept adding new content into it, and it's still going on. So they are still adding new content into it, and they have created a system based on game theory that hijacks a person's biology. It's like it increases their curiosity. Well, what if I look behind this door and look for these clues, and support people as they find things, and diminish others as they criticize. And it's fascinating, the number of people and a lot of otherwise very smart people who just fell into this trap because we're biological and we're actually really easy to hack.
Yeah, very hackable. And do you, at Wisdom Keepers, do you try to provide more other, like, alternate ways of viewing, practicing, thinking, experiencing, and do you have any wisdom keeping events coming up that people should be aware of? Or rather, because this might air quite a bit later, Chris, than we're recording today, so keep that in mind. In general, like, if people want to tap into an older tradition of wisdom, and the keepers of those kinds of wisdom, how can they find out more, and what kinds of things can they do, either with you or other groups?
So the website is www.wisdomkeepers.us, and so that's where new classes and events are always going to be posted. This summer, I've got a family camp, 2 weeks of family camp that folks can come and join us for one of those weeks. And other classes right now are mostly full, but I'll keep adding new things in periodically. And what I'm doing in the programs that I'm offering is I'm really supporting folks to look deeply at the system of nature, that all of these interconnections, and to look at it as a whole, as opposed to this more the scientific method of breaking things down to their smallest component parts, and then assuming that each piece is an equal player in the whole. We're looking at everything as a system. And I'm encouraging through mentorship a way of cultivating curiosity and looking at the world honestly, and then teaching Stone Age skills. So that's a way of meeting our needs directly and being in relationship with nature while meeting those needs. So I need I'm cold, so I need a shelter, or I need fire, or I need clothing, or I need to snuggle more. But if I'm going to build a fire, then I'm needing the component pieces. So I'm going out and I'm talking with the one-legged peoples, the standing tall peoples, the trees that are going to provide the components. And then, what does it look like to be in right relationship with receiving those components, so that then I can create a fire? And what is that? What are we doing even when we create a fire? And how does that tie into old stories of relationships, of energies between masculine and feminine, and cultivating what you could say is the first domesticated animal, bringing fire into the village, something that eats, respirates, something that moves, something that reproduces, something that lives and dies, and needs to be constantly tended. And so we're looking at these kinds of relationships that the Stone Age skills offer a doorway towards understanding. I do a lot with kids and with families, and in particular, I'm looking at just how fast the world is changing, and our contemporary educational systems are not adequately preparing children or adults for a life that has that much transition in it, that much continuous change. Mm-hmm. And so, what do they really need? And I think that they really need down to 10% battery here.
All right. Yeah, we're finishing up. Thanks, Chris.
I think that people really need, they need foundational stability, which you find in nature, by looking at these perfect systems that have been evolving over the last 4 billion years. You need empathy and connection, and you need the ability to communicate and cooperate effectively. And you need to cultivate this ability to adapt and change which is a cultural thing now, because humans are not really, I think, instinctively designed to be changing this quickly. Indigenous cultures have been very, very stable. Like you grow up by looking at the adults around you and mimicking what they're doing, so that you can meet all your needs easily and effectively, and that's going to last you your whole life. That's kind of the old model. And now we have to have a cultural way of embracing constant change. Mm-hmm. So this is what I'm seeking to support people with in the kind of educational mentorship that I'm doing through Wisdom Keepers.
That's great. That's great. I wonder if your participation is growing. Do you see a trend there? Are more people trying to engage with these courses?
There's definitely an interest in going. There's an interest in looking at these questions, and I think more so right now. There's kind of a concern that is shared by so many people that our world is changing, mm-hmm. and how do we make sense of it? And I think that there are not that many people who are trying to come up with practical solutions to how do we make sense of this. Even the people who are working on artificial intelligence, when the genie is out of the bottle and AI becomes sentient and begins writing its own programs,
right,
nobody knows how to put the genie back into the bottle.
Nope.
And they're like, nah, it's all right. We're just going to stumble forward as fast as we can. It's because whoever is a few steps ahead is going to make the most profit.
Yeah.
And, so we have this foolishness.
We can't think about it right now. We just have to get there first.
Yeah. But yeah, we're in a whole new reality. And we should be asking ourselves constantly, is this the reality that we are consciously choosing, or is this just where we are landing? And, we've kind of taken our hands off the steering wheel, and we're letting larger society drive it. We need to be thinking about that.
That's good wisdom to leave on, to let people think about, not ruminate, but
I didn't tell you yet
consider.
about the screaming toads.
I know. I love that. I have it. So maybe your phone runs out, but tell me about the screaming toads.
All right. So in eastern Montana, we have this toad that's called Woodhouse's toad, and you know, I'd never heard these before because I'd never been in this area, eastern Montana, during the springtime up until this year, and I'm listening and I hear this, and I'm like, oh, that's a Woodhouse's toad. Very cool. And then another one calls it, you know, it's a little higher pitch. And there were 4 of them at this pond. Each one was calling at a different pitch. I'm like, that's cool. So you can tell who's who. But then as the evening got on, they started overlapping. And when these two would sing together, it harmonized and created a new sound. And they were all calling from the same spot. And it was very intentional. Like this was a chorus that was going on here. And sometimes 1 or 2 or 3 would start at the same time. But often, you know, 1 or 2 would start together and then another 1 or 2 would join in. And more often than not, though, they ended at exactly the same point. And then there would be silence. And then the screaming started. So literally, you know, there's this like, and then another one, and then there'll be a pause, and then there's one that's like, and it sounds like somebody screaming bloody murder in the middle of the night. You know, it's the most bizarre thing, and you know, it's totally normal.
I love it.
You know, so again, I'm learning by being in places with intact ecosystems, and this is the symphony that's playing. And there's a symphony from the standpoint that we typically think about it, like music. And the toads there, they're definitely, they've got the musical side to it. But then it's also, you know, it's the eastern kingbird that's flying down and picking off some of the dragonflies. You know, I would find their transparent wings here and there, a few of them around camp. And, you know, that's part of the symphony, even though it's not something that is that's auditory. And you know, this was just super fun for me because it's a brand new species that I haven't spent time with, and they're just screaming.
That is great.
It was a toad rave.
That's I love it. Was. Yeah, I thought core toad for or like a barbershop
right.
Core toad. And I picture the hello my baby, hello my honey. You know, Bugs Bunny.
Right.
I'll message you about my screaming toad connection. It's too long to talk about here, and there's no need either. But I'll let you know about it. But that was really beautiful. Thank you for bringing in the screaming toads at the end.
You're welcome.
So we'll try again in another moon.
That sounds good.
Do you have any particular adventure that you're going on between now and then?
Well, I'm leaving here in the next couple of days and heading back down to Los Angeles. So I will be teaching down in Los Angeles until the end of July. And so that's the next leg of the adventure, is immersion into that human community and the ways in which they can go to to find the nature that is coming up out of the cracks in the concrete and the parks and whatnot, because nature is all around us. And so we're going to have a lot of fun. Good. And we'll also be the family camp I was mentioning, that's in the Sequoia forest, so we'll be around some trees that are as much as 4,000 years old. So super beautiful, super amazing, and a lot of really unique species that live in that place too, like a dwarf rubber boa, It's an actual boa constrictor, but it's, it's like that long.
Wow.
And super gentle. You can just pick it up. It won't bite. So yeah, so much to explore, so much fun to have and to learn.
That's great. Good. And I look forward to hearing about how it all has gone in the next time that we get a chance to talk.
Sounds good, my friend.
Thank you very much. I'm so glad we made it with your battery. Thanks for having us in your gear. And
my pleasure.
Yeah. Until next time. Love you, Chris.
All right, my friend.
All right.
Yeah. Really good chatting with you. Have a
As
beautiful
always.
rest of your day.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye now.